Alright, photo restorers, let's get back to business here. Right, we just moved the pieces, we filled in the border, everything's looking pretty good except for the elephant in the room, which is the crack through the middle of the photo and off to the left side, so let's fix that. Before we get going, I'm going to flatten the layer to get rid of the extra layer for the border. So I'm just going to go Layer, Flatten Image. Okay, and now I'm going to use the clone stamp and the spot healing brush to get rid of this crack. Once again, if you took 142 with Photoshop, you're going to be an expert on the clone stamp. If you took Lightroom in 142, it's going to be a new tool for you to use, and don't worry, you'll have plenty of time to perfect it, and we're going to dive way deeper into it in the semester. So, let me just explain these tools to you. The most important thing about to do when you're using the clone stamp or the spot healing brush, these are the tools that we're talking about when we use the verb to Photoshop, like to add and subtract things from photos, like remove people's blemishes and stuff. It's the clone stamp and spot healing brush. So the most important aspect of using these tools is to never use them on the background. We always want to make a copy of the background before we use them. So to make a copy of the background, we just hold down Control, click, and hit Duplicate Layer. And just hit OK. So now I have a copy of the background. The reason being is we have the History tab over here. The History tab records everything that we do up to, I believe, I'll keep saying this, don't know if it's true, 35 steps. After 35 steps, you start losing the earlier steps, right? So it only records 35 steps. As you get going, it gets rid of stuff over here. The reason that it's important to edit on a copy of the background is every time you use the clone stamp and spot healing brush, you click. You're clicking a bunch. You're selecting something, clicking, selecting, clicking. Every click of the mouse is one step. So it's really easy to fill up those 35 and get to a place where you can't go back, okay? So if we're doing it on a copy of the background, if we don't like it, we can throw the copy of the background away and start over again. So let me talk about the clone stamp and spot healing brush. So right here is the spot healing brush. It looks like a band-aid over a circle. The keyboard shortcut is J, so I'm just going to select that. It's a brush that you can change the size of. I always change the size of brushes using the bracket keys. The bracket keys are right under the plus key on your keyboards. So the left bracket makes the brush smaller, the right bracket makes the brush bigger. I never use too big of a brush. I always try to use a pretty small brush, something like that. I always want to zoom in too to this. So we're just going to paint over the top of this. So the way that the spot healing brush works is you just click and drag over what you want to get rid of, and then Photoshop is going to analyze the information around that selection and just fill it in automatically. Pretty easy, right? This tool used to be horrible, and now it's actually pretty good in Photoshop. But it does have limitations, and we're going to show you what those limitations are in a second. So I'm just going to click and drag over here. Pretty good. See what's here. Get into the camera here. It's looking good. So I always use this tool up until the point that it doesn't work. It's getting a little funky in there, but still pretty good. So let's keep going. Still doing good. It's funny how good this tool works now. It used to not be this good. So we're just clicking and dragging over, and Photoshop is just analyzing the information around it and filling in with what it thinks would fit over the top there. And it does a pretty good job. We see that we lost the shadow of the boy's coat here. So that would be an area where you might want to fix that. And so that might be an area that we'll say the spot healing brush didn't work so good. So we're going to grab the clone stamp. So the clone stamp is right here. I have a handout for this stuff too. The clone stamp is right here. We're going to select that. Same thing, it's a brush, so you can change the size with the bracket keys. Left bracket for smaller, right bracket for bigger. So I'm going to make it pretty small, something like that. And I want to add the shadow back into this little boy's jacket. So the difference between the clone stamp and the spot healing brush is the spot healing brush, Photoshop picks what it wants to replace the information with. The clone stamp, you pick. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to grab the shadow of this boy's coat right here by holding down Option. When I hold down Option, notice my cursor changes to this bullseye. I'm going to hold down Option and I'm going to click. what that does is it records the information where the cursor sits, and I'm going to drag it over here, and I'm going to click and drag. And what that's doing is it's copying this information onto this part of the photo. We do have a little bit weird of a repeat here, so let's get rid of that by just clicking on it. I mean, this is like such a small part of the photo, it's not really that important, but you get that. So let's actually go back to the spot healing brush and keep using it until it doesn't work, because I don't think it's going to work too good in this boy's face, but we'll see. It's proven me wrong so far. So I'm just going to keep going with it. And I'm just clicking and dragging and dropping so that it's just kind of picking from the area around it. It does good in these areas of, uniformed patterning and color and tone, but it doesn't do so good sometimes on the border of things. Let's see what it does with this guy's hair. It does an okay job. It's a little funky. Got weird there, but it's still looking pretty good. Let's see what it does on the edge of the house here. Oh, that does good. You guys are like, well, I'm just going to use the spot heal brush for everything. And it does. It is a good tool to use, but sometimes you will find. Let's see what it does with the little boy's face here. Oh, it did some weird stuff, right? It got rid of his eye because Photoshop just didn't. There's too much transition in that. So I'm just going to edit undo that by either going Command Z, or I can jump back in the history. So once I get to the boy's face, I'm going to use the clone stamp and his little bonnet here. I'm going to select that, click and drag. Notice that the little bullseye under the cursor follows along. So what that means is, if I go up here, I'm going to hold down Option, I'm going to select this pixel, and I'm going to bring it over what I want to replace and start painting over it. You guys see that? Now, this isn't perfect, but remember, these photos are small, and we're going to end up printing these photos out to the original size. So this boy's face in this photo is probably like not even 1/4 of an inch, so you're not going to see too much weirdness in there. But you don't want to be super sloppy with it, but you don't have to be too crazy with it either. Let's Photoshop over his eye here. Let's zoom into his eye a little bit. See, it's looking a little funky right there with his eye, but that's okay. I'm going to make the brush a little smaller. Whenever you get into areas where it's just kind of like not looking that great, that's kind of Photoshop telling you make your brush smaller and zoom in. So I'm going to just grab this shadow here. Boy, I don't know. I'm doing kind of a weird job on this. That's okay. Fix over here. Fix over here. So zoomed in like this to 600%, we can see that his eye is pretty funky. But I bet when I zoom out, and if I was to print this at the original size, we wouldn't be able to tell. So let's zoom out here. Okay, maybe I can tell that his eye is funky. Let's mess with it some more. There's something about up here that just doesn't look right. That's getting better. Let me just keep going on this stuff. People's faces are the hardest, and some of the photos that you guys might end up with, there might be missing faces. So you're going to have to clone stamp people's faces from one person's face onto another person's face type of thing. So let me see here. I'm going to go back to spot heal brush. You can also use these tools in combination. So I usually use the clone stamp to do heavy lifting, and then the spot heal brush to kind of clean things up a little bit. Let's see what this does right here. It's looking okay. It's looking better. We can also get rid of these scratches if we wanted to, right here. So now if I zoom out, we see that I fixed those scratches pretty good. There is some weird funkiness going on here where there was the crack, and back here, but I could fix this by just blending these two sides together by just painting over it with the spot heal brush a couple times. That looks pretty good to me. Right here I can kind of tell where the crack was. I can go over it again. Boom, that looks pretty good. So, once again, right, this photo is in real life maybe this big. We're never going to see the weirdness of his eye when it's that small. But if we zoom in, right, if we were to print this thing big, we'd want to be a lot more diligent with how we're painting in his eye. So that's how you're going to use the clone stamp, the spot healing brush at this stage to fix your image, to get rid of any cracks. And the same would go for your images that you don't have to move pieces, right? A photo like this, you would use the clone stamp and spot healing brush to get rid of all of these cracks and tears and all of this stuff. So if your photos aren't all torn or ripped into multiple pieces, you still have to fix all the creases, all the folds in the paper, right? We'd have to fix all this stuff. So make sure that you do that, because we don't want no folds in our images. So that's how you use the clone stamp and the spot heal brush at this stage of the game. So go get her. Okay, bye.